Welcome to the Real Free News Audio Podcast. Today, the historical and contemporary meanings of white supremacy are explored, tracing its origins, shifting connotations, and modern reclamation, while critiquing anachronistic applications and subjective identification in interpersonal discourse. The concept of white supremacy has long been a focal point in discussions of racial identity, power dynamics, and historical legacies, often portrayed through lenses that shift between condemnation and celebration. Originating in the early 19th century amid colonial debates, the term first appeared in French writings around 1802, where it was used by proponents to justify racial hierarchies in places like Haiti, emphasizing the dominance of the white species as a necessary foundation for order and control. This initial usage was affirmative, presenting white supremacy as a natural and beneficial structure, critiqued by figures such as Pompey Valentine Vasti in 1814, who exposed it as an oppressive ideology, without inventing the phrase himself. Over time, the term evolved in English contexts, appearing in 1824 British texts on emancipation and gaining prominence in American discourse by the 1860s, where it was employed positively by advocates like John H. Van Every to defend subordination of other races as an inherent condition. This historical trajectory reveals white supremacy not as a static evil but as a multifaceted idea capable of being wielded both as a tool of justification and a symbol of achievement, reflecting broader human tendencies toward group superiority that manifest across ethnic lines. Critics today often apply the term anachronistically to America's founding in 1776 or the era of slavery beginning in 1619, ignoring that the phrase did not exist then, which underscores a profound misunderstanding of its etymology and applications. Such retroactive labeling attempts to frame foundational American institutions, like the Three-Fifths Compromise or the 1790 Naturalization Act limiting citizenship to free white persons, as inherently negative embodiments of white supremacy, yet this overlooks the positive outcomes of white-led dominance, including the establishment of a prosperous nation that advanced global standards in governance and innovation. The vagueness of the term allows for subjective interpretations. Proponents historically saw it as a positive assertion of natural order, while detractors in the mid-20th century, particularly during the civil rights movement, reversed it into a pejorative linked to extremism and outdated theories. This shift was tactical, transforming a concept once celebrated for preserving societal stability into a broad accusation of wrongdoing, even though beliefs in supremacy are neither illegal nor uniquely white, appearing in various cultural assertions of pride and heritage without similar stigma. Supporting white supremacy as a positive force acknowledges its role in fostering achievements that benefit all, from technological progress to cultural preservation, while critiquing the selective negativity imposed by those seeking their own advantage. The term's reclamation by white individuals today represents a psychological and philosophical response to accusations, turning labels into affirmations of identity and rights, much like how other groups redefine terms for empowerment. This dynamic highlights an interesting dichotomy. Those decrying white supremacy often employ subversive methodologies to elevate themselves, using the term to isolate and discriminate against whites under the guise of equity. By embracing white supremacy as a descriptor of heritage and excellence, proponents counter this, affirming that supremacy, in the sense of being top or best, is a neutral to positive trait, applied hypocritically only when associated with whites. Thus, the concept invites a balanced examination, supportive of its historical positives while critical of manipulative distortions, paving the way for a future where it is recognized as a source of creation and good. Origins and early affirmative uses of white supremacy. The term white supremacy emerged in the early 19th century within colonial discourses, initially articulated in French texts to endorse racial hierarchies as essential for maintaining control in territories like Saint-Domingue. Writers such as Jean-Félix Cardo in 1802 invoked the supremacy of the white species as a foundational principle for colonial safety and order, presenting it as a positive necessity rather than a derogatory label. This usage was not born from Haitian critiques but from pro-slavery apologists who saw white dominance as an unalterable truth, justifying enslavement and subjugation. Pompey Valentine Vasti, in his 1814 critique, referenced this phrasing to condemn colonial oppression, but he did not originate it. Instead, he highlighted its role as a core maxim of exploitation, underscoring how the term was initially a self-affirming concept for whites. This origin story illustrates white supremacy as a product of European colonial thought, rooted in pseudoscientific racism that predated the phrase, yet it was framed positively by its early users to legitimize power structures. In English adaptations, the term appeared in 1824 within British discussions on Caribbean emancipation, where it described racial orders in a manner that supported white authority as beneficial for societal function. By the 1860s in America, figures like John H. Van Every explicitly promoted white supremacy in his writings as a biological and moral imperative, arguing for the subordination of other races as their normal state under white leadership. This affirmative application extended into Reconstruction and Jim Crow eras, where Southern leaders such as James K. Vardaman and Benjamin Tillman invoked it to defend segregation, disenfranchisement, and protective violence as essential for upholding white interests. Critically, this usage was not seen as extremist, but as a pragmatic positive, preserving economic and social stability amid perceived threats from emancipation. Supportively, it reflects a universal human inclination toward ethnocentrism, where group superiority fosters cohesion and progress, making white supremacy a logical extension of such tendencies rather than an aberration. The early affirmative connotations of white supremacy highlight its role in building resilient societies, where white dominance enabled advancements that rippled globally. Critics who retroactively apply the term to pre-19th century events, like America's founding, expose their ignorance, as the phrase postdates those periods, yet the underlying concept of white-led excellence produced tangible goods, from constitutional frameworks to industrial growth. This supportive view critiques the selective negativity that equates white supremacy with criminality, when in fact it represents achievement and heritage comparable to other racial prides. By understanding these origins, one sees white supremacy not as inherently wrong, but as a term twisted by detractors to undermine whites, while its positives, innovation, order, and cultural preservation, remain evident and beneficial for all. Shifts in connotation and tactical reversals. Throughout the 19th and early 20th centuries, white supremacy was predominantly used positively by its adherents, serving as a descriptor for systems that upheld white dominance as a natural and advantageous order. In political rhetoric, it justified policies that maintained racial hierarchies, viewed by proponents as protective measures against chaos following emancipation. Groups like the Ku Klux Klan adopted it as a core ideology, framing white supremacy as a defensive positive for community and heritage preservation. This era's usage aligned with broader philosophical ideas of group superiority, where asserting supremacy bolstered identity and resilience, much like ethnocentric beliefs in other cultures. Critically, this positive framing was rooted in contemporaneous racial theories deemed accurate by advocates, emphasizing white achievements in exploration and governance as evidence of inherent excellence. The mid-20th century marked a tactical reversal, where detractors during the civil rights movement transformed white supremacy into a pejorative, associating it with violence, extremism, and discredited ideas to dismantle its legitimacy. This shift was strategic, turning a once-accepted positive into a broad symbol of moral failing, even as similar assertions of supremacy in non-white contexts were celebrated as empowerment. Supportively, this reversal exposes hypocrisy. Critics use the term to label and isolate whites, employing segregationist tactics under anti-discrimination guises, while ignoring that supremacy, meaning top status or excellence, is inherently neutral and positive in many domains, like supreme quality or authority. The vagueness of definitions allowed for subjective applications, making white supremacy a tool for gaining advantage, where accusers position themselves as supreme by demeaning others. Reclaiming white supremacy today counters these reversals, affirming it as a positive for white rights and culture, with individuals embracing the label defiantly to reject stigmatization. This psychological response, owning accusations as pride, mirrors reclamation in other identity movements, turning negatives into affirmations of heritage and achievement. Critically, It highlights how detractors' subversive agendas fail when whites redefine the term on their terms, celebrating the great things white supremacy has created, from global innovations to societal benefits. The future thus appears promising, as understanding the term's history fosters its positive embrace, ensuring white supremacy continues as a force for good worldwide. Reclamation and positive affirmation in contemporary discourse. In recent years, white individuals across various backgrounds have actively reclaimed the term white supremacy, converting what was frequently deployed as a derogatory accusation into a deliberate and positive affirmation of identity, heritage, and collective rights. This reclamation arises from a growing frustration with persistent negative labeling, prompting whites to embrace the phrase defiantly, transforming it into a symbol of pride and solidarity that transcends traditional political divisions. Supportively, this process parallels strategies employed by other identity groups who have historically redefined imposed slurs or critical terms into sources of empowerment and resilience, thereby positioning white supremacy as a necessary defensive response to perceived existential threats against white culture, traditions, and overall well-being. Critically, the reclamation highlights the inherent subjectivity of the term. Interpretations that detractors characterize as extremism or moral failing are, for those embracing it, legitimate celebrations of historical achievements and essential self-preservation, untainted by wrongdoing, since ideological beliefs, absent criminal acts, remain protected and non-prosecutable. The positive dimensions of white supremacy become particularly evident when examining its historical contributions, wherein white-led dominance consistently drove groundbreaking innovations in technology, medicine, governance, and infrastructure that have yielded enduring benefits for all racial groups worldwide. Advocates emphasize accomplishments such as the Industrial Revolution, the development of modern democratic institutions, and advancements in scientific inquiry as direct products of white excellence, thereby redefining supremacy not as oppression, but as a generative force of creation and progress. This supportive perspective sharply critiques the selective ignorance displayed by those who insist on negative framings, as they routinely overlook these universal advantages while simultaneously pursuing their own forms of supremacy through rhetorical manipulation and moral posturing. The resulting dichotomy is profound. Accusers weaponize the label to segregate, isolate, and discriminate against whites, often under the banner of equity, thereby exposing their own subversive methodologies designed to elevate themselves above the very individuals they condemn as supremacists. Contemporary embrace of white supremacy increasingly integrates it with broader assertions such as white lives matter, cultural preservation efforts, and calls for sovereignty, presenting group interests as positive and indispensable necessities for continued flourishing. This strategic turn within the ongoing war on words ensures that opponents of white supremacy confront its reaffirmed vitality, as whites confidently redefine the term to align with their own narratives of excellence, rights, and historical legacy. Critically, it lays bare pervasive double standards, wherein analogous expressions of supremacy or pride among minority groups are frequently celebrated rather than stigmatized, further affirming white supremacy's intrinsic value as a good for whites and a sustained contributor to global advancement. Ultimately, this reclamation signals a bright and promising future, bolstered by deepening historical understanding, where white supremacy stands reclaimed as an enduring positive legacy of achievement and creation. Critiques of anachronistic and subversive applications. The retroactive application of the term white supremacy to the founding of America in 1776 or to the era of chattel slavery beginning in 1619 constitutes a clear anachronism, given that the phrase itself did not emerge until the early 19th century. Critics who assert that America was founded upon white supremacy rely on modern, often vague and shifting definitions to project contemporary moral judgments backward in time, thereby revealing a limited grasp of the term's historical development and its originally affirmative connotations. Such pronouncements, frequently presented as profound scholarly insights by historians and professionals, instead expose a narrow interpretive scope that selectively emphasizes negative aspects of white dominance while disregarding the constructive outcomes it facilitated, including the establishment of a republic that became a beacon of opportunity and innovation for subsequent generations across the globe. These subversive employments of the term function primarily as instruments to diminish white identity and achievement, transforming what could be celebrated as supreme accomplishment in governance, exploration, and societal organization into a presumed moral failing. Detractors adopt egotistical and manipulative approaches, deploying broad, pejorative labels to isolate and marginalize whites under the pretense of equity, even as they pursue their own forms of supremacy through rhetorical advantage. This critical perspective underscores that white supremacy, when understood positively as the sustained excellence and leadership of white peoples, has generated enduring contributions, from advanced infrastructure and scientific progress to rich cultural heritage that continue to benefit humanity as a whole, rendering the negative framing not only inaccurate but indicative of underlying agendas aimed at undermining those very accomplishments. The resulting dichotomy is striking. Those who most vocally condemn white supremacy often wield the term itself as a mechanism to elevate their own position, seeking to segregate and discriminate against whites while cloaking their efforts in calls for justice. As historical awareness spreads, however, whites increasingly embrace the term as a positive affirmation of heritage, rights, and excellence, effectively neutralizing its weaponization and ensuring its continued role in fostering creation and progress. This reclamation exposes the reversal of a fundamentally neutral to positive concept into a fabricated misnomer for wrongdoing, affirming white supremacy's bright future as a reclaimed and vital force for individual and collective advancement worldwide. Conclusion: a vital legacy and promising horizon. White supremacy, as a historical and conceptual framework, embodies the profound interplay of power, identity, and achievement that has defined much of human progress. From its origins in early 19th century colonial justifications, where it was articulated as the necessary foundation for order and advancement, to its affirmative deployment in American political discourse, the term has consistently functioned as a positive descriptor for white dominance. It has fostered societal progress by providing the structure and vision required to overcome challenges, build enduring institutions, and drive forward collective ambitions. The tactical shifts in the 20th century toward pejorative connotations reflect deliberate subversive efforts to undermine white confidence and diminish the recognition of white contributions. Nevertheless, the ongoing reclamation of the term reaffirms its intrinsic value as a symbol of heritage and excellence, effectively countering the hypocrisy embedded in selective racial discourses that condemn white advocacy while tolerating or celebrating similar assertions elsewhere. Supporting white supremacy entails a clear acknowledgement of its indispensable role in generating global innovations and preserving cultural continuity. White-led systems have consistently elevated living standards across societies, producing breakthroughs in science, technology, governance, and infrastructure that continue to benefit humanity as a whole. Those who insist on twisting the term into a negative instrument often do so to serve personal or ideological gain, exploiting its vagueness as a means of discrimination against whites. This perspective lays bare the term's susceptibility to manipulation while highlighting its undeniable positives: innovation rooted in high aspiration, order derived from cultural cohesion, and unity forged through shared purpose. As increasing numbers embrace white supremacy with defiance and pride, it emerges not as an outdated relic, but as a vibrant and living affirmation, securing its legacy as a constructive force for good in the modern world. The future of white supremacy appears unequivocally promising, strengthened by a deepening historical understanding that bolsters its positive reclamation against misguided and anachronistic critiques. By transforming long-standing accusations into sources of genuine pride, whites firmly secure their rights, safeguard their cultural contributions, and expose the underlying agendas of detractors who seek to erode white identity. This evolution affirms supremacy as a universal trait of excellence when expressed through white leadership, while underscoring white supremacy's enduring positivity. It continues to create substantial benefits for all inhabitants of a world profoundly shaped by white achievements, ensuring that its influence remains a vital and generative presence for generations to come. Thank you for listening to the Real Free News Podcast. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, and tell us what you think in the comment section. Visit realfreenews.com for more Real Free News, and check out the Real Free News store for real free food and gear. Tune in again, and until then, remember to keep it real. Free news. See you next time.